how we ended was you were asking about like thoughts. Where do the thoughts come from?
Yeah.
Right? Because like, yeah, I mean, again, like, yeah, it's important to like have awareness, but then it's next, you know, it's always next level. Okay, but yeah, but where do they come from? And it's funny because when I was a kid, I was the person that always endeavored to understand why. Like somebody couldn't just say to me, it's this, without me then saying, but why is it like this? How did it get here? How did it get this way? I want to understand it. Help me. I don't know. I was just always curious. So it's funny because once I became a therapist and I was like, or learning more about like mental health, for me, the real like motivator was I want to understand why. I know why I understand how I feel, I understand how I act, but I want to know really why, like where did that come from? And so this presentation really just builds on the last one. And the last one we were talking about like how to be more aware, just how to be more aware, right? So this presentation, I printed PowerPoints for you if you want to look at them. And I'm just like I'm on the second slide. I need my glasses, of course. So, you know, I use the analogy, and obviously the reason I'm doing it here in this gym is because I found the relationship between fitness, the physical body, and mental health to be just so closely intertwined. Like, wow, the parallels are incredible. And so, in fitness, we have that general preparedness phase, right? Like that first phase where you walk in here and you see Danny and you have no idea that your hamstrings are weak, and then suddenly he makes you do like a deadlift and you're like, oh my god, and then your hamstrings are on fire for the next few days, and like you have this like you start to develop awareness, like, wow, I had no idea that my shoulders were so weak. And then also I think when you're in that phase, when you leave the gym, you become more aware of your body out in places when you do stuff. For me, my clients, it was always different random stuff. You know, I had no idea that I was having such a hard time getting out of my car. Like I'm starting to notice that it's hard for me to get out of my car, it's uncomfortable. Or I notice when I get out of bed, like my low back is actually a little stiff. So that's a great phase, right? And then there's always like the next phase, which is, okay, we're gonna make things a little harder, but we're gonna work on like, say, balance and coordination. And so like that next phase for me with clients, with personal training clients, was stability, mobility, and flexibility, right? And so really that is just so identical to what I do with mental health clients. It's incredible, right? The first phase is, let's just develop some awareness. What are you thinking about? How do you feel? What are you doing? How are you coping? All of these things, right? And then eventually we have to move into like what is much harder work, okay? And so stability in mental health really is the ability for you to step out of your comfort zone into tricky situations and tricky, unstable environments, but still remain stable, right? And tricky to me, or what tricky is for you is very different to what it is for you. And tricky, I'm referring to like family gatherings, Thanksgiving, the holidays especially. I'm referring to friendships, I'm referring to relationships, I'm referring to social settings, social gatherings. Maybe it's like a work function, whether it's like a Christmas party, a holiday party, or it's a work meeting or whatever. Any of those situations you can consider to be tricky because you notice that those situations make you feel very uncomfortable, right? So you need stability. You need to feel like, okay, I can go into like an unstable environment and I can still be stable and be okay. So, you know, I had this client, and I love telling a story because this client is, first of all, he was the most hilarious client I've ever worked with. And this is like a personal training client. And this man was like, he was like in his early 60s, had never exercised. And he came into the gym and he was like, you know, I need a trainer. And I ended up getting paired with him. He was like in his early early 60s, not in the greatest of shape, but he knows it. And I say to him, what do you want to work on? Like, what do you want? And he's like, listen, he's like, I have daughters, they're getting older, they got engaged, they're gonna get married, and I know they're gonna have babies. And I don't want to be that like unhealthy guy, grandpa, who can't do anything, I can't lift them up, I can't play with them. I want to be able to like get down on the floor and play with them and then not need a crane to help me get back up. So I'm like, okay, like that's like very specific. So we went through like the first phase, right? Which is like general preparedness, like let's figure out like how your body's doing. He loved that phase, loved it. Like he was so motivated. I don't know, for like the first 3 weeks, he was coming in and he was telling me like what he was noticing. He's like, you know, like I didn't, my shoulders were really weak, but I like that we're doing like these very basic exercises, like machines, like to just strengthen his body. And he was developing all this awareness and he was so motivated and so happy. And then I realized, okay, well, eventually, obviously, we have to like, I had to push him a little bit more. And we had talked about it when we first got together. I had said to him, there's gonna be work involved, it's gonna get a little difficult, so you're gonna have to do some work. And he was like, I'm totally motivated and I'm ready. So I put him on, just to test like a little more of his stability, I put him on a BOSU. And if you don't, do you know what a BOSU is? So take that physio ball, slice it in half, and put like a foundation on it, and then you flip it over, and people stand on it, right? And it's the ball. So, and you know, all kinds of exercise happen on this BOSU. He had support, I was holding on him. I put him on the BOSU, and oh my God, like the legs, like totally wobbled, his whole body was wobbling, he almost fell off, and I was holding on to him. And then eventually, like, I took him off the BOSU, and he was like, what the hell was that? And I said, well, that was like, I just wanted to get a better understanding of where you are with your core. And he's like, what does it mean? I'm like, we really need to work on your core. I was like, we really need to work on your core. We need to work on lots of different things, but I see that probably the most important thing that we can do for you, because he's older, and I'm thinking about like balance, and I don't want him to fall, is like we really need to work on core, right? So I said to him, it's gonna get harder. The exercises are gonna get a little more difficult, but I promise, you know, if you stick with it and work hard, you're gonna see some serious results. And you'll be able to get on the BOSU and not wobble so much. So here's what I noticed. As soon as it got a little harder, he was not as motivated in our sessions. I also noticed that he was he was very much so like a trickster. He would be like, you know, I gotta go to the bathroom, I'll be right back. And he would go to the bathroom and I'd be like, okay, he's been gone for like 12 minutes. And at first I was like, you know, maybe something is going on. Then I started to notice that this was a pattern. Another thing he would do is like, I would say to him, listen, I want you to, you know, I want you to do like a plank on the BOSU or what have you. And he would say, why does this work? Like, tell me what's going on in my body. And me, stupidly, would get wrapped up and start like explaining all of like the biomechanics and anatomy. And then I realized he's just getting me to talk. He's just wasting time. He just wants to waste time. Constantly trying to distract me until I caught on to it. And I said, you know, I'm starting to get a feeling, and we had a really good rapport, so I'm starting to get a feeling that this hard work makes you a little uncomfortable. He's like, well, it's hard. He's like, it's really hard, I don't like to be in pain, you know? And I said, well, what was your goal at the end of the day? What did you tell me what your goal was? And he's like, well, yeah, well, you know, I want to be like a good grandfather, and I want to be active, and I said, so what's going on? And he's like, wow, but it's hard. And then I realized right then and there, there's a disconnect between what he wants, like in here on a rational level, and maybe something that's going on like internally. And I have to tell you, in mental health, it is quite literally, it's exactly what happens. I have individuals who want to stay in the awareness phase, and then when it's time to do some hard work, they don't want to, right? And so we're gonna talk about like what that hard work really means, okay? So developing awareness, I put this in there because I'm like, let's just review really quick what we did in that first session, which was, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, and what am I doing? And am I noticing that there's a connection between my thoughts and my feelings and my behavior? The second thing is, what situations make me really uncomfortable, right? Maybe you guys offhand know right away. I know the situations that make me uncomfortable. But I find, like, honestly, in mental health, I work with a lot of people that have no awareness, right? They come in and this is such a revelation, like, I didn't realize that this was going on, and I didn't even realize that this was happening, like, internally for me, right? So it's, what are these situations that make you really uncomfortable, right? Okay, so you have some awareness. I'm aware that right before I go into a one-on-one with my boss, I feel a certain kind of way. Maybe that means I drink a lot of water suddenly, or I need to go to the bathroom, or whatever it is, right? So you have this awareness. How do I cope? This is always the uncomfortable part for many clients. Am I coping? How do I cope, and is it healthy? Right? And so for many people it's, okay, so I drink a lot, like when I get home from work. Because it's like I told you last time, it's so normalized. It's just a normal thing to go home and have like a bottle of wine. Everybody has their wine after work, right? And so it's, am I coping? Am I trying to avoid distress, or I'm just uncomfortable? And is that really like the best thing for me? And then the last thing is, am I constantly getting stuck in a thought trap, right? I gave you like the thought traps to look at. I don't know if you were able to notice, like, wow, holy cow, I jump into this thought trap all the time. Maybe you realize you wake up at 4 o'clock and you're awake at 4 o'clock in the morning, and oh my God, there's a thought trap and I'm stuck in it and I can't get out. And then of course there's connecting it to, how does it like mess with your function, like your day to day? So I remember working with this young woman, and she shared with me that she couldn't sleep, and obviously this is now in a mental health setting. She's like, I'm just having the hardest time, like I feel like I just can't get to sleep, I'm really wiped out. And I said, okay, well, what's your nighttime routine like? And she's like, well, I have dinner, and then I watch like a couple shows, and then, it's like 10:30 and I get into bed. I'm like, you just like straight up go to bed and turn off all the lights? And she's like, well, no, I bring my phone and I sit in bed and I kind of look through, I scroll through and she's like, I know it's bad, but I like it. And I scroll through Facebook and Instagram and all that drama. And I'm like, okay. And then what happens? She's like, well, then I start to get a little tired, then I put the phone down, but then she's like, I fall asleep for like an hour, and then I wake up, and then I can't go back to sleep. And I'm up for hours. And I'm like, really? What's happening? Like, do you get out of bed? And she's like, no, I just kind of lie there. I'm like, well, what's happening up here in your brain? And then she was like, oh, well, and then she starts telling me everything that she's thinking about, and it's literally a tunnel. And she can't get out. And she had never connected that this thought pattern was keeping her awake. She thought the two were completely separate. And when I told her, do you realize that these thoughts that you're having are triggering this inside your body, and there's no way you're gonna go back to sleep. And so it was very helpful for her. She loved that phase, right? That awareness. Oh my God, like, wow, I didn't know. Oh, wow, that's amazing. And then I have clients that come and they start sharing with me the stuff that they've noticed, and they'll come to like that weekly session and be like, here's what I noticed this week. Awesome, right? So we're in that wonderful awareness phase. And then they start to develop a little bit of insight. When I say insight, is when they really start to make connections. Like, oh, yeah, when I do this, this happens, and this is wow, right? So now they have this like really good understanding of their thoughts, their emotions, and their behavior. Just like Charles. When it's time to move past that awareness into more, let's work on something a little deeper, oh boy, what do you think happens? This is what happens. This is what I normally hear, okay? And I heard it both in fitness, and I hear it in mental health. This is too hard. I'm tired. I'm not giving up my one. I have too much work. I hate being in pain. I really just don't have time. I'll start next week, or I'll start next month. I'd rather just stay in that awareness phase, because I feel like I was doing work there. And honestly, that's how Charles felt. My personal training client, he told me, he's like, well, I thought I was like doing great. I'm like, bro, you were doing awesome. You were killing it. But do you want to stay there, or do you want to progress, and do you want to get down on the floor and play with the grandchildren? He was like, oh, that's true, right? But he had to do some work. So in mental health, honestly, and I have like had to say this point blank to clients who either no-show for their appointments, or cancel, or maybe come to the session all distracted, right? Talking about all kinds of stuff and not really talking about maybe some deeper stuff, right? And I will say to them, all the awareness and all of the insight in the world does not mean that you will change. It just means that you're aware, period. That's it. You just know you're so great. But it doesn't mean that your behavior, that you fundamentally are going to change in a very profound and sustainable way. And for that to happen, we really need to like work on your core. And so when I say that, and I tell clients all the time, if you think that this is something that you really want to move forward with, it means that we're going to do some deep work. If that works for you, then we're going to continue. And if you're not ready for that, that's okay. Because some people just aren't ready. And that's okay, and I respect that. And a lot of people stay, but some people do leave. And they're like, no, I'm not ready for this right now. It's like, no, because they know. Because they know there's like deeper work to do, right? So, when I talk about stability, when I talk about stability, if I had taken my client Charles, if I had put him on the bow suit, and I had no idea what his core strength looked like, if I had no idea what the state of it was, and I just put him on a bow suit, and I had him like hold on to something while I grabbed a couple of dumbbells, and then handed him dumbbells, and told him to do bicep curls on an unstable surface, he probably, very likely, would have either created a new injury, like gotten hurt, or exacerbated an old injury, okay? It's the same thing with mental health and your core. If you don't know the state of what's really going on inside, and you roll into these relationships with your family, with your friends, with coworkers, with a new partner, even with strangers, you run the risk of developing a new injury or exacerbating one that already exists. You're not even aware that you have this injury, right? So I always say, like, your core, like, we don't really know the status of our core until we're tested. And what tests our core? People, situations, the greater environment, right? You just have no idea. For us, like, we think everything's great when we're nice and tucked into our comfort zone. When we're pulled out of our comfort zone and we have to go face, then we realize, oh wow, okay, well, I had no idea about that about myself, okay? If you don't have core strength in fitness, right, Danny? If you don't have core strength, you can only go so far with certain exercises, right? You can't, it's really hard to progress beyond, because you really need that core strength to stabilize you and keep you upright for all these exercises. It's the same. So your core is going to impact family, friends, partner, children, how you are with your colleagues, how you are with complete strangers, and more importantly, with yourself. And like, that's always something that clients are like, huh? I'm like, what kind of relationship do you have with yourself? And do you not think that maybe what is going on internally in you has something to do with that? So what is your core? Right? Your core, it could be all the beliefs that you have about yourself in the world, And these are beliefs that maybe you developed on your own, maybe you developed them out of experiences, maybe they were handed to you because this is what your parents believe, so you gotta believe it too, and you're too little to know the difference, right? Maybe they're beliefs that you developed because you were bullied, you were picked on, and so you developed a belief about yourself because when you're 10 years old, you don't know how to process being bullied, you just get bullied, right? You just get bullied and then you develop a belief about yourself, and it's that simple. And so this really is your core, and then there's like values, right? The core values that you believe to live by, you think you live by. And I always say, like, I think our core values are like the transverse abdominis. It's like that really deep abdominal muscle that you don't really think about a whole bunch, nor do you actively like engage it like you would the rectus, right? The rectus abdominis, I think, is like your beliefs. Those are your beliefs. They're easier to access. You're more aware of them. Transverse, not so much. Transverse is deep. So these, like, I think, like your core values that maybe you don't think about too much, right? And so, you know, a lot of times when I work with clients, something that I hear often, so often, is, I just don't understand. I know this. I know it's unhealthy for me to get into a relationship who has a history of verbal abuse. Then why do I do it? Why do I get into these relationships? I feel like I do it over and over again. And I always like help them get back to, well, maybe we need to do some deeper work, right? Maybe we need to like explore what the hell is going on, like internally, that on a rational level, like Charles, I want to play with my grandchildren, but my behavior, it's like completely different. It's not in line with what I think. So there's this disconnect, okay? Any questions? No, all right. The next slide is what I think is like a really important slide. So we're gonna stay here for a minute, okay? So remember, I don't know if you remember, but I brought this up in the last session, okay? And that triangle, right? We have our thoughts. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. I didn't make this up. Thoughts, feelings, actions, behaviors, right? And then like outside of the triangle, there's like, you know, I put like what happened. Like, okay, there's something that happened, right? And what happened for you is what triggered those thoughts, and then what led to those emotions, and then went to the behaviors, right? So I'm gonna give you an example. I'll take a what happened. The what happened is you got an email from your boss. And the email says, we need to talk, let me know when you have time. Such a great email to get, right? So you get that email. Automatic thoughts, what do you think they are? Well, here, this is hypothetical. Automatic thoughts. Oh my God, I'm in trouble. What did I do wrong? What if I get fired? She probably hates me. I'm pretty sure she hates me. She looked at me the other day and I could tell she hated me. She was kind of rude in the last minute. I don't like her anyway. Like, I hate her, but oh my God, I need this job. Automatic. I'm talking about, they just come, right? Maybe you're sitting there at your desk and everything just kind of pauses because you can't focus because suddenly you're flooded with all of these thoughts. And then in that moment, maybe what you start to feel is anxiety, fear, maybe some anger kind of courses through you. Maybe there's sad, I don't know. Like, you have all of these feels happening in that moment because these thoughts are just like flooding your brain. And then of course your behavior, who knows what it might be. Maybe this is the end of the day and you just kind of leave. You can't even answer the email. Or maybe you do answer it. Like, you know, can you meet tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna spend the whole night not being able to sleep thinking about this, and you just wanna get it over with. I just want this meeting to be done, right? So maybe you're a little impulsive. And then maybe you go home and you rely, or you go to like an unhealthy way of coping with it because you're freaking out. Because your thoughts are just there. They're just there and they're gone, they're gone. Here is what I find is fascinating about these situations. We think that it's the email and it's the boss that has triggered all of these thoughts. And a lot of times when we do that, what ends up happening is we use words like, you made me feel this way. This happened and it made me feel this way. The reality is, if you look at that triangle, it is not the situation that has made you feel any kind of way. There's something much deeper, and there's something that maybe, and this isn't true for everyone, that maybe you believe about yourself that has triggered these thoughts. I'm gonna give you another example. This one is less obvious, but it's more complicated, and it's common. Let's just say that your partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, your partner is working a lot of hours, right? And you haven't really been spending much time together. And you say to your partner, I'd really love to spend time. Like, do you think maybe we could go out to dinner, like on Thursday? And your partner says, I'm good. And your partner gets frustrated. It's like, I'm really sorry. You know I'm busy. I have a lot of work. It's a busy time. I'm an accountant. It's tax season. And I really can't pull away. And I wish you wouldn't ask me that, like, whatever, right? So the answer is no. That could automatically turn into, they don't love me. They love their job more than they love me. They never have time for me. This is always a problem. I wonder if they had this problem. They probably had this problem in their last relationship, and that's probably why they broke up, but they haven't told me. And I'm just not important to this person. They don't value me. They don't see how much value and like that, honestly, like those thoughts can spiral. You can spiral and like go into those thoughts forever, right? And then as you can imagine, what you're feeling is anger, hurt, frustration, despair, abandonment, like all of these things might happen. And then you can only imagine how that affects your behavior, right? So maybe what happens with your behavior is maybe your partner is taking a break from work and wants to be like nice to you, wants to do something, and you're like, I'm done. Don't like leave me alone. Because you've already decided the person just hates you, right? So again, it goes back to, then I'm gonna blame my partner for making me feel this way. No, your partner didn't make you feel that way. You feel that way, period. And the reason for that is, what could be underneath all of these thoughts? What could I possibly be believing about myself that these thoughts are so easy? And I say believing because I know that in my work, what I hear a lot is what people think about themselves. And some people have like very high standard, like like I love myself, I'm great, I deserve the world, but their behavior doesn't match it, not even a little bit. What you believe about yourself is, like I told you, it's core. Very much so, like very possible what you believe about yourself is something that you learned as a kid, or something that you've an experience or what have you. And what's hard about this is like core beliefs tend to be very subconscious, that it's not something that you're necessarily aware of. It really takes deep work. It takes for you to like stop, do the thought record, right? Go through a situation and fill out the triangle and go, okay, my automatic thoughts are, I did something wrong, I'm gonna get fired. They don't like me. They probably think I'm a terrible employee. What do you think you might be believing about yourself that those thoughts are so true? And again, I put people on the spot and I make them uncomfortable. But therapy's not supposed to be comfortable. So I say, well, what do you believe about yourself that this is true for you? And that's when it's, again, like for many people, a revelation. Like, I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. I'm useless. Maybe I think I'm worthless. It's the same thing in a relationship. What do you believe about yourself that you're so convinced this person doesn't love you, or doesn't have time for you, or they don't value you? Is it maybe true that you don't value you, that maybe you believe you don't have value? And it's like, whoa, maybe that's true. Maybe I do believe that. And so it's not enough to just stay in the awareness of my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. If people want, like if you want change and you really want to know yourself better, it takes, let me go a little bit deeper than that, and let me ask myself, what could I possibly be believing about myself that these thoughts come like so quickly? Okay, still with me? Yeah. So when I work with clients and we're talking about how to change, right? So then the next question always is, okay, so maybe I believe that